So Uber and Lyft ramp up legislative efforts to shield their business model. You guys saw how that went down in California. It was catastrophic. The drivers got screwed over. Gig economy companies are backing state laws in New York and elsewhere that would cement driver status as contractors in exchange for a union. Now, in exchange for a union, beware. Some of these unions, IDG being one of them, have taken a lot of money from Uber in the past. Can you trust them? My gut? Nah, I don't trust IDG. If you've been taking money from Uber and Lyft for years, and now you're pretending, hey, you got the drivers' backs. Nah, I don't fall into that trap. And this here is dangerous. And what we need to learn from this, ladies and gentlemen, is what happened in California. So if this pops up in Arizona, if this discussion opens up in Texas, in Florida, just say, oh, hang on, I've heard the story before. Let me go back to Proposition 22. Yes, oh yes, that went down in California. Aha. And that's what happened to the drivers. They all got screwed over. Ask any California driver here that said yes, amen to Proposition 22. They regret it, right? They should have fought. They should have bargained. No, they sold out to them. And now they don't have their multiply anymore. They're even less independent than they were before. They can't see that destination. You got to learn from California, right? And I'm specifically talking to the other states, specifically talking New York, specifically if they are trying to cut any deals with unions. Beware. What is that fuzzy relationship between that union and Uber and Lyft in the past? Has that union received money from Uber or Lyft in the past as IDG did it? And IDG does appear in this article, right? So, you know, after California passed a law in 2019 that effectively gave gig workers the legal standing of employees, companies like Uber and Lyft, they spent some $200 million on a ballot initiative exempting their drivers. It worked. It worked. All that money spent bought them 58-point-something% of the vote. It worked. But you don't have to make the same mistake, dear driver. To avoid such threats in other states, the companies have pressed for legislation that classifies drivers as contractors, meaning they are not entitled to protections like a minimum wage and unemployment benefits. The most serious initiative in this vein in New York State has stalled while facing opposition from labor groups as the state's legislative session winds down this week. But the effort seems certain to be revived, and the negotiations in which the companies offer to grant workers bargaining rights and certain benefits, but not all the protections of employment, have indicated what an eventual deal could look like in New York and beyond. Gig companies like Uber and Lyft have long resisted classifying workers as employees, stating in regulatory filings that doing so would force them to alter their business model and risk a financial hit. Industry officials have estimated that making drivers employees could raise labor costs 20 to 30%. They're already raising the rates of riders more than 20 to 30%, ladies and gentlemen, right? As California considered a bill under which gig drivers were likely to be classified as employees in 2019, the companies met repeatedly with a few large unions. Listen up, including the Service Employees International Union. I don't know anything about them. And the Teamsters, I know a little bit about them, to discuss a deal along the lines of what they have proposed in New York. But the talks collapsed because many of the labor movement refused to make significant concessions while holding the legislative upper hand. The bill passed in September of that year. After the ballot initiative that exempted drivers was approved last fall, however, some in labor became more amenable to a deal. New York where discussions were already underway, was a natural place to seek one. Some of the companies had a relationship with labor in the state, chiefly the International Association of Machinists, in which Uber created and funded a driver organization. There we go. In which Uber created and funded a driver organization in 2016 known as the Independent Drivers Guild. Now, if Uber formed and created and funded this Independent Drivers Guild, can you trust them? No. Can you trust them? No. Can you trust the IDG? No. Right? So whatever they're trying to sell you on, ladies and gentlemen, remember they were formed and funded by Uber. In some ways, the Drivers Guild foreshadowed the arrangement the companies are seeking today. It provided a way for drivers to address concerns with the company, but agreed not to contest drivers' contractor status, right? Yeah, we'll come over here, sign up here, we'll throw you under the bus. At the same time, labor had leverage. A number of rulings in New York granted gig drivers conventional unemployment benefits in the state, potentially leading to hundreds of millions of dollars in liabilities for the companies. And there were New York City regulations like a minimum pay standard for drivers amounting to $17 an hour after expenses that some gig companies have sought to ease. A legislative draft produced by industry officials in consultation with labor groups deemed gig workers to be network workers, right? Network workers that would essentially have made them contractors with certain protections and the right to join a labor organization that would bargain on a sectoral basis, meaning all at once with the major companies. Sounds a little bit like what the worker classification that they have in the UK. The arrangement would have created more than 150,000 new union members in the state. The bargaining would have happened separately for drivers and for delivery workers and would have covered a minimum wage, portable benefits like retirement contributions and process for appealing terminations, which you can't these days. You get terminated, good luck. Unless you turn to social media and the media, you don't have a chance. But the details of the proposed unions raised eyebrows. I wonder why. As laid out in the draft, the companies would have signed an agreement with a single union, giving it access to workers through corporate email systems. Once the union signed up, 10% of the industry's eligible workers and the state labor commissioner certified the arrangement. The union would have become the exclusive agent of all workers in the industry, funded by Uber and founded by Uber, right? No other union would have a chance to represent them. Critics complain, one of me, including the Rideshare professor, that the gig companies did not consult widely enough beyond some of the labor groups that stood to benefit. Among them, the machinists, which appeared likely to be the first to get email access to drivers, and the Transport Workers Union of America, which appeared to be first line to get email access to delivery workers. The company's sectoral bargaining bill was drafted without workers' input. Let me repeat this, ladies and gentlemen. The company's sectoral bargaining bill was drafted without your input. You had nothing to say in this matter, said Lygia Gualpa of the nonprofit Workers' Justice Project, whose group has helped delivery workers build an organization that claims more than 10,000 members. They don't get to decide their own representation. It's prearranged. Does that not smell like a rat, ladies and gentlemen? They get to decide their own representation. It's prearranged. Sorry, we do not sign up for that. Ms. Gualpa, like other labor leaders and worker organizers, said she found out about the proposal only in mid-May after Bloomberg reported on its existence. Aziz Ba, organizing director of the Independent Drivers Guild, said in a statement that the choices about which union or unions to join rests with the workers. Aziz Ba, tell me, how much money have you taken from Uber over the years? You got to let workers know that. Otherwise, we're not going to join you. Now, Critics also complained that the funding for the union, potentially more than 20 million a year for the drivers' union alone, would have come from the companies through a fee on rides that they collect, making workers feel beholden to the companies. And under the initial proposal, workers would have been prohibited from striking while they were bargaining with the companies. BS, we don't buy that. Depriving them of a crucial source of leverage. Not going to happen, my friends. According to Kate Andreas, a professor at the University of Michigan Law School, some of those features were at odds with federal labor law, which typically bars unions that companies effectively select, fund, or control. The law does not apply to contractors, however. Seriously, so they try to exempt us from this law because we are contractors. The proposal would have also replaced the conventional unemployment benefits that many drivers are currently ineligible for with a new system that could have led to lower benefits and that could be harder for workers to collect in certain situations. IDG, you want us to sign up for this crap? We're not. And the proposal would have largely prohibited municipalities from regulating work done through ride-hailing or delivery apps, rolling back the driver minimum pay standard in New York City, though workers could have bargained for a floor as high as the minimum or higher. The disclosure of the initial draft of the bill in May created a backlash against any proposals featuring weak unions or unions effectively selected by the companies. They're talking about the right to bargaining. That's a Trojan horse, said Bharavi Desai, Executive Director of the New York Taxi Workers Alliance. Thank you. Which helped drivers with ride-hailing services win unemployment benefits in the state. That union would be complicit in giving them cover as they really seek to dominate the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, we fell for Proposition 22 in California. Do not fall for this BS. New York, don't fall for it. Some labor groups involved in the discussions, like the state AFL-CIO, became tepid in their support. John Samuelson, the president of the Transport Workers Union, backed away from the proposal, citing concerns that workers wouldn't be allowed to strike in opposition from the delivery workers. An Uber official who was not authorized to speak publicly said the company was open to changes that would make it easier for more than one union to represent. But you try and force this through until we